Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your hosts from the darkest timeline.
I am Sean.
And I'm CC, and this is the show where we review all the anime series from the previous season we did and didn't watch start to finish. Today we'll try to find some form of justice in the lackluster adaptation of Ace Attorney, are alternating between hope and despair with Danganronpa, and discuss the unexpected return to the Exorcists of the Black Order in D.Gray-man Hallow. No news today. We actually decided to cut back on that segment in general, especially when we review 3 shows, because the episodes just get too damn long. So unless something really big like for example, the Funimation Crunchyroll merger happens, or a project that we are really looking forward to gets announced, expect less news talk coming from us in the future. As always, check out Anime News Network to get thoroughly updated on anime news by yourself. That's where we got most of our news from anyway. And with that said, let's head right into our first review in the trash section. So Ace Attorney, or Jagden Cybern, if I'm not mispronouncing that, is an adaptation of the, I think a lot of people know it, video game franchise by Capcom, which was originally released, the first 3 games I think for the GBA, right?
Mm-hmm. They were launch titles on the Game Boy Advance.
Yes.
So they've been around for a while.
So, the basic story of those games surrounds, or involves the unexperienced upstart defense attorney Phoenix Wright, or in Japanese, Ryuichi Naruhodo, who is thrust into the world of trials and tribulations when he starts his job as the Fei & Co. law officers. And after his first introductory case, his boss, Mia, is murdered, and he basically finds himself as the new chief of that law firm, trying to solve her and other murders during the course of the show. One of his main helping hands comes in the form of Mia's little sister, Maya, who is a spirit medium and can even contact the ghost of her sister if the situation in court is dire enough, which also comes with her body changing to that of her older sister, which is a bit, brings its own problems with it because, of course, she wears smaller clothes, and
it's okay, don't worry about it.
Exactly, you know what that means. Anyway, one of Phoenix or Nick's, why do they call him Nick in the translation sometimes?
It's shorter from Phoenix, you know?
Yeah, okay, I guess. Anyway, or Nick's biggest opponents in the courtroom is his childhood acquaintance or / friend and star prosecutor Miles Edgeworth, or former friend, I should say. And Phoenix has to stand his ground against him and a lot of other prosecutors to prove the innocence of his clients and serve his idea of justice, which sometimes is a bit different of the idea of justice of the actual justice system, because that it's a bit crooked in this show and in this franchise. It's really out there and really ridiculous, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. On a quick tangent, there was a video on the Game Theorists channel about Phoenix's brand of investigation and how he should probably end up going to jail himself. But, it's just a theory. A game theory!
Well, no, it's probably actually true. I mean, not only him, but while we're at it, let's just say it. But the prosecutors, or some of them, in that fucking series,
they're low down dirtbags.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really like they're doing unlawful stuff, like illegal stuff, just that wouldn't just fly. A lot of that stuff just wouldn't fly in a normal courtroom, like I don't know, preventing the defense lawyers from bringing forward, legit evidence just by saying, no, I don't want to see that. Like, what?
It don't work that way.
Stuff like that constantly happens. And those cases are really ridiculous. They work on, on game and anime logic. It's it's a really watered down version of a justice system that feels more like, I don't know, a wrestling match sometimes than anything else, or I don't know, like a theater play or whatever. Yeah, it's don't expect those games or this show to be a really, I don't know, faithful adaptation of a courtroom drama or anything. This is
if you're looking for that, you might want to turn to Law and Order.
Yeah, it's really comic booky. I mean, it's still a procedural in a sense, but yeah, still, it's crazy. It's out there, especially when it comes to the characters. But anyway, I played the DS version of the first game. Aside from that, I'm not really familiar with the franchise. I think you played all of the games, right? Not the newest ones, but...
Yeah, it's been a minute since I played through the original trilogy, despite having it on my 3DS. But yeah, I think I have a little bit more experience than you do as far as the games go.
Mm. Did you like all of them, or did you have a favorite or something? Favorite case?
I mean, I like them all to varying degrees, because the games are essentially, visual novels, and the hook is that, you are investigating and presenting evidence in court. Favorite case, though? Now, I didn't get far enough in the show, and we'll discuss why later, or in a few minutes, rather. But I don't know if it was covered in the show, but there was an extra case, I think, added to the end of the DS game that wasn't in the original GBA. And I think...
the first one?
Yeah.
There were. I think there were 2 cases added to that. I'm not sure. But yeah, that was not covered in the show.
Yeah.
The show only covers the basic GBA cases, not the DS cases. I don't know why, because it's not like those DS games haven't been around for long enough to adapt those cases as well. But I don't. Maybe for terms of length or anything.
I feel like they've been around long enough, though, because they came out a decent amount of time after the GBA, and way before this was ever a star in the sky as far as anime adaptations go.
Yeah, and you were not the only one telling me that the added cases for the DS versions are the best one, at least when it comes to the first game. So I don't know why they skipped over that, honestly. I have no idea. It's weird. Like you said, the games are basically visual novels. They're a bit more involved because you are going around, doing investigation, collecting items, serving cases, so it's a bit like an adventure game in parts too.
Yeah, I mean, as far as visual novels go, this is another slight tangent. I feel like you have to have a little bit more of a hook rather than just, here's the story, we'll read it to you. Because later on in this particular podcast, we're going to talk about something else that ties into another visual novel.
Ole, ole.
So, yeah, that particular one also has its own hooks as well, in a sort of a similar way. I'm sure you probably already guessed what it is. Mm-hmm. But anyway, yes.
Anyway, yeah, my problems with the game is I suck at playing detective. So
you just got to tap on everything, man. Gather all the evidence.
Yeah, but then you lose lives.
Oh, you mean in the actual courtroom?
Yeah, in the courtroom. That's a problem. Like I often didn't understand what the game wanted from me. Like I often was pretty sure what the conclusion to the case was, and who the perpetrator is and everything, but not which item on the evidence list the game deemed the next vital clue to turn the case around. Like which item am I supposed to click on now, right? Where's the clue hidden?
Yeah, because even though you might understand something, you're not Phoenix Wright in the courtroom. He's still making all of the logical steps to the conclusion.
Yeah, and sometimes...
And we have to do that too, even if we already see the ending.
Exactly, and if you were one step, farther than him already in your deduction and everything, you probably would press on the wrong item and say, no, why would I click on that item? It's so obvious that it's this one, right? But no, he had to, take a little in-between step first. And yeah, I had a lot of problems with that. And that's why after, wrapping up the basic storyline of the first game, I didn't play the edit case, even though I heard it was the best one. Yeah, I know. But I was like, no, I don't want anymore, because some of the court stuff really pissed me off because I couldn't... I was like, I figured this out, but why doesn't it why doesn't the game accept my logic? So it's flawless. Anyway, yeah. So when I heard there was an anime adaptation of that, I was like, oh, cool, I can experience the characters and the story without having to play the game. And a lot of people said the characters are cool and the story is cool. So I was like, yeah, cool. Amazing. I'll watch the anime. Yeah, and on a basic story level, this isn't a bad adaptation. All the cases of the first and second game, I can only say because I read through the story summary for the second game. But yeah, all the cases of the first and second game are in there, minus the DS only cases. So for Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, and what's the second? Justice for All, right? Mm-hmm. The second game, yeah.
You know, it's funny, going back to earlier when you said Trials and Tribulations, considering that's the third game.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we'll get that too. But yeah, for now it's 24 episodes and the first two games. 4 cases for the first one. Will be the first case is more like a tutorial in the game and in the anime as well. It's like Phoenix having to learn the ropes basically. And yeah, 3 cases for the second game. And the second part of the series. So some of the trials are condensed, shifting some interrogations to other places than the courtroom and cutting out some investigations. This is done for the sake of pacing, naturally, and I think it's pulled off rather competently. Maybe if you've played the games, you'd be like, wait, no, this is not how it happened. This was happening somewhere else, and that person wasn't here or something. But it works. Some of the stuff needed to be condensed because otherwise the story would move at as a snail's pace. So yeah, that was done rather competently.
I was say because you're trying to condense down a game that's 16 hours into a much shorter space.
Yeah, probably, and also there's enough basic fan service in there for the people who have already played the games, like their remixes of the most recognizable music from the games used in the show. The characters use a lot of the same poses and animation defaults from the games. Phoenix famous, pointing the finger and yelling objection, that's in there, and Miles Edgeworth like shaking his finger and spreading out his hands and shaking his head and stuff like that. That was in the games, and that's all in the show. And the word balloons with objection and hold it in there. Yeah, all of that is in the show as well. So yeah, in that regard, it's pretty faithful. If you watch the series via the Crunchyroll web player, you even get 2 subtitle tracks, one with the original Japanese names and one with the Americanized versions. I watched the Americanized version mostly because I was already familiar with it from the first game. But if you want to experience the original version, now you can. Wouldn't be a bad idea, actually, because the Americanized version comes across as even more misplaced and goofier in the anime than in the game. Because while you could still pretend in the game that the story is not set in Japan, you can't really pull that off in the anime. There are too many locations.
Eat your hamburgers, Apollo.
Yeah, exactly.
They're totally not sushi, Apollo.
I don't know. Do you see the food in the games?
No.
So
they do a much better job of trying to convince you that it is not Japan in the localization of the games.
Yeah, and they can, because they can jump around more between scenes without it feeling alienating. It's just the nature of the game as it being a visual novel and everything. But in the anime, you have to show some stuff and how characters get here and there, or it would be weird. And they show the food and everything. So there are many locations shown that are clearly Japanese, and a lot of food that's clearly shown to be Japanese. So it's just plain weird. And of course, since you have voice acting, you constantly hear the characters say something completely different than what is shown in the subs. Also, even if I've never eaten it, I can imagine what miso soba looks like. But what the fuck are burger noodles even supposed to look like? What?
Don't worry. Unless they were trying to say that instead of yakisoba pan. I don't know.
Yeah. No, they translated miso soba with burger noodles, and I have no fucking... Someone draw me a picture or something.
The literal version of eat your hamburger, Apollo. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's funny. It's really funny, but it's weird. I mean, there are a lot of the Japanese script relies heavily on Japanese puns, so they try to translate that somewhat faithfully into the Americanized versions with the names and everything. Like the American names are puns as well, just like the Japanese ones are, just catering more to Western humor and Western comedic sensibilities, and the Western understanding of the specific language. So anyway, like I said, there's enough in there for people who've played the games in regards to fan service that it's like, yeah, okay, I can. This is a faithful adaptation. This is like, okay, this is what the games are. This is what the anime are. This is basically the same story. In that way, it's good. It's decent. Where the show completely fails is in its presentation. Mm-hmm. So, an episode ago. No, 2 episodes ago, actually, when we did our big sneak peek, and another episode before that, you were talking about how you were unhappy with how one of the seasons of Nanoha that A1 was responsible for felt phoned in.
Yep.
Well, holy shit. Talk about phoning it in.
I said this before we started recording. I'm going to say it again. Capcom was just looking for someone to do it as cheaply as they could.
Yeah, that's what I'm suspecting. Phoenix Wright, the anime, looks so incredibly cheap, it's ridiculous. Characters are constantly off model in really obvious and glaring ways. Like sometimes eyes, like one scene from another, eyes get smaller, heads get bigger, the hair changes, the clothing changes.
Oh, no.
Like it's ridiculous. It's so obvious and so in your face. The animation is mostly stiff and lifeless. There were so many screenshots of bad artwork coming out of that show. You could fill a whole book with it. And yeah, I think the Twitter account of Quality Anime did that for a long time. But yeah, at least that show dominated their timeline. But it's not just the bad artwork. That would be bad enough. But the direction lacks any kind of dynamics or imagination. In the games, you can get away with the limited amount of animation because it plays more, like we said, like a visual novel, and the thrills come from solving the case yourself and not watching someone else solve it. You obviously don't have that in the anime. I mean, you can riddle along and everything. Oh, who could it be? But I don't know. The cases feel too basic for that to make that interesting in itself.
I kind of feel like it wouldn't be wrong to call it like a very edited down let's play of the game.
Yeah, kinda. I guess that works. Obviously you are the one who can help, Phoenix to solve the case. So in certain situations where you would take the reins and decide what he's doing next, he either does it himself or one of the other characters that didn't do that in the game is helping him along and giving him a vital clue that he for some reason can't deduct himself. And yeah, so that what happens. And, while in the games you get your thrills or your excitement out of solving that shit yourself and helping Phoenix along, you don't get that here. So you would need to make that show interesting in a different way. And the most easy way to do that would be to make it visually interesting, to like compensate for the stuff that was more interesting in the game by giving the show more visual appeal. And since a courtroom is not the visually most interesting, diverse, or appealing stage to tell your story, you would have to get creative with how you present those battles for justice or the souls of your clients or anything, or Phoenix clients. And the anime almost never does this. It's mostly talking heads pointing at things, and that's it. Almost no interesting camera angles, no crazy over-the-top animation or color design, nothing. You occasionally get a gust of wind blowing at Nick's opponents when he, throws his objection in their faces, but that's about it. And it's also, except for one episode, the conclusion to the Steel Samurai trial, it's not, very visually interesting either when he does that. It's just, pointing his finger and then a gust of wind and the hair of the opponent gets blown back. Sometimes they fall out of the stand or the chair they're sitting in or whatever.
So I remember one scene in particular. I think it was it had to have been the first or second episode because I was about as far as I could stomach. There was this really just absolutely garish, ugly CG shot of the courtroom, and I was just like, oh God.
I think that is the only time that happens, actually, but,
But even so, that sets a really bad precedent.
Yeah, that doesn't save it. There are maybe a very few scenes, one in the last case, I think, where the camera pans around Phoenix in one of his plaidoyers, that it looks a bit more appealing, but they're very few and far in between. Spread very thin. It's disappointing. Was this show desperately needed? Was a director who, besides a bigger budget, obviously, was a director who, compensated for the basic procedural nature of the storylines by heightening and exaggerating their many ridiculous moments, to the max. Ayumu Watanabe, who directed this, also directed Space Brothers, which is a good show, and he also directed a lot of Doraemon stuff and Mysterious Girlfriend X, so he's not an unexperienced newbie or something. So I must assume that the main reason for the show looking like this was either, what we already said, the budget, just in itself. There was no time, there was no money involved, or he didn't give a single fuck about this adaptation. So I don't know which one it is, maybe both.
I get the feeling that it was just a paycheck.
Yeah, maybe. Or he was just not the right guy for the job. I don't know. But yeah, the direction for the show is super lackluster. What the show really needed was someone like Kenichi Suzuki and Naokatsu Tsuda, the directors of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure TV series, or Yoshitomo Yonetani, the director of Food Wars. People who can infuse the most mundane settings and activities with enough visual craziness to make them a lot of fun and get you engaged. The trials needed a lot of, crazy camera work, pan-around shots, interesting angles, a lot of weird color patterns, stuff like characters growing to supersized version of themselves and looming over their opponents, or some strong visual metaphors for two attorneys having an actual physical battle inside the courtroom instead of yelling at each other. Stuff like that. We've seen that in other shows. Just a direction that lets the imagination run wild and, put some really, really anime-ish stuff in there that, you wouldn't see in a normal courtroom drama. And, Ace Attorney doesn't have that. It needed it, but it doesn't have it. Yeah, that's a shame. Because there are still some pretty neat stories and a lot of fun and crazy characters in that series. A lot of which we haven't even seen yet. Because like I said, the first 24 episodes only cover the first two games. And I heard some of the best stuff is yet to come. Trials and Tribulations apparently was very, very cool and ended apparently on a big cliffhanger. And then we got the Apollo games and now the 3DS games. So, there would still be a lot of grounds to cover and interesting stories to tell, but I don't know if I would want to see them in this version.
Either hopefully A1, if they were to get the job again, would actually, be able to pick up the slack, or either that or they just hand it off to someone else who can.
Yeah.
But again, I feel like, Capcom just wanted it done quick and cheap.
Yeah. Jobbers. Yeah, like I say, I don't know if we'll get a second season. It hasn't been announced yet. Right now, story-wise, the series ends kind of a blah note because the most interesting case wraps up after half of its runtime, and then we're stuck with cases that feel a bit like filler because they are from the second game, which is apparently the worst of the bunch, at least from what I've heard. And, the cases are not inherently bad or anything. It just feels like, after this giant ass main story relevant trial that the first game wraps up with, and which the first half of the series wraps up with, everything that comes after it feels like, okay, this is the everyday life of Phoenix Wright, and we won't get back to the main story and how it relates to our main characters and everything until much later. So yeah, feels a bit unsubstantial how the series wraps up. I don't know if I'd continue watching if a new season got announced. I'd have to think it over. As for recommending it to someone, I'd say if you have already played the games, don't bother. There are some nice extended scenes in the show, like an episode that details how Nick, Miles, and Larry solved their first case together as kids. That was pretty nice. Gives them a bit more character depth and development. But aside from this, there is nothing in the show for you that the games haven't done and probably done better. And for the people who haven't played the games, if you don't mind that genre of game, or that specific version of visual novel and how it handles the cases and the courtroom and the solving of the crimes and everything, like I did, I'd say play the games instead. It's more satisfying to solve the cases yourself. Not for me, because I had issues with, deciding what the game wanted from me and figuring that out. But I guess the presentation in the game, while also very limited, still feels more engaging than the one in the show and doesn't look as cheap.
Well, that's because it is a game and it's interactive. With anime, as much as we love it, is a passive medium. You watch it. You're not hitting buttons and getting a reaction and causing the outcome yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So, in order to make this an interesting thing, they should have done more than just adapt the basic storyline and how the cases, how the cases went and developed, and they needed to bring some visual panache to it, and they didn't. So yeah, this show is a bust, and it is kind of deserving of the trash stash, which is a shame and a bummer and everything. But what can you do? That's how it is, and I have nothing more to say. John, do you have anything more to add to Ace Attorney?
Other than the fact that it was a big steaming pile of disappointment, you hit on a lot of it pretty well. And I mean, you say it had some of the iconic songs. It seemed like, as far as I saw, they were rarely ever used. Like something like Persona 4, its anime adaptation, they pulled straight from the soundtrack, and there's nothing wrong with that because it worked. Why they didn't do that with this show, I don't understand.
Well,
because there's so many just generic, flat, middling songs in there that have no emotional connection to the source material. That's just kind of like, that's how I felt about it.
Yeah, well, in the beginning of the series, and you only watched like the first 2 episodes or something, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's more noticeable in the beginning. They ramp up the number of songs from the games by during the course of the series. Like there are a lot more coming. But yeah, you're right. There's still a lot of songs that are not from the games. And I don't know why they didn't do more remixes from the games. What the reason for that? Licensing or something, or I don't know. But yeah, there could have been more. That's right.
I mean, there should have been more from the start.
Yeah, I guess so. And maybe they were thinking that some of the stuff would, work more like, I don't know, in the context of the game and as more as background music when you're playing the game than in an actual context-heavy scene in an anime. But yeah, it's not the best soundtrack, but, that matches the rest of the show. Anyway, let's end this and get to a visual novel adaptation that's hopefully better than this one.
So, the next show on the list today is one that deals in the ever popular aspects of hope and despair. It's Danganronpa.
Mm-hmm. Finally, we're there. We're finally there.
We have finally reached Hope's Peak Academy. Mm-hmm. Or have we, though? Because the full name of the show is Danganronpa 3, The End of Hope's Peak Academy.
Mm-hmm.
And the name of the show already causes a little bit of confusion, considering the third actual game isn't out yet. I mean, they're calling it New Danganronpa V3. Whatever. That's their choice. But yeah, so this was actually split into two different shows. One called Future Arc and one called Despair Arc. So Future Arc is a story that takes place after the games Danganronpa 1, Danganronpa 2, and Ultra Despair Girls. So I have to tiptoe around a lot of spoilers because these two shows cannot stand on their own. You need to have the background knowledge that the games provide you with. So
for the uninitiated to the Danganronpa franchise, what is the basic storyline of the first few games even about?
So the first game revolves around the main character Makoto Naegi, and he's been recruited to the school Hope's Peak Academy. He's joining their 78th class. He's ready and raring to go. And after the first day, apparently everyone has lost their memory, and no one remembers who each other is. And trying to give this as broad an overview without delving too into spoilers, but it deals with, as is referred to by the cast, the biggest, most awful, despair-filled incident in human history that is more or less the gist of it, and trying to escape from the school because terror is rained down upon them by a stuffed mechanical bear called Monokuma, and he says, if you want to get out of here, y'all got to kill each other.
That setup alone, when I like basically read that for the first time, sounded so fucking ludicrous. That already was interesting.
There's a lot of weird, strange elements to the story, but it works somehow. Yeah. So basically what happens is the broad overview is that someone gets killed. Multiple someones, because it happens several times. But anyway, and Monokuma says, you have to decide who amongst you who done it. And if you determine who done it, everyone gets to live, except the perpetrator. They get put to death. If you can't successfully determine who done it, then the perpetrator gets away with it, and everyone else is eliminated.
Yeah, the perpetrator can leave the school that they're trapped in, right?
Right. Now, the way this is determined is a classroom trial. Oh, hey, look at that! We're tying back to Phoenix Wright already.
Yeah, and this is the only way for them to leave the school, if I remember correctly, right? They can't leave other than committing a crime and getting away with it.
Right, and they mostly can't leave because the school is like sealed off, and they can't get out that way. And Monokuma is holding the magic key, essentially, that'll let them out the door.
Also, as unthreatening as a little mechanical teddy bear might sound, he's also somewhat, without giving too much away, but he is a force to be reckoned with for different reasons, and not as easy to overcome as you would maybe think.
Yeah. In the games, the way it's handled is you go around the school gathering evidence, piecing it together, which, again, sounds very familiar to Phoenix Wright, but the trials have like different segments to them that play out differently, as opposed to hearing testimony, cross-examining, presenting evidence. The crux of the game is finding contradictions to what you have in your big pile of evidence, and you're basically going around with what they call these nonstop debates. Everyone is yelling at each other all the time. No, you're wrong. No, it's this. But are you sure it's not that? And you, as the player, have to be like, wait a minute. That's not right. It doesn't match with this. And you present the evidence to them, and that's how you move forward. And I mean, there's other little mini games in there that help to spice it up and help you figure out the details of the case. But
you basically sometimes, at least, you shoot the evidence at them or contradictions with a word gun or something, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they are called truth bullets.
Yeah.
But as far as the games go, they are, they kind of take the foundation that was built by Phoenix Wright, and they like turn it up to 11 and make it even more anime than it was before.
They're also, in terms of style, they're visually very, I don't know, out there and appealing, in my opinion.
Yeah, they have a much different visual appeal, but it works great. It looks and it works great. It feels much more comic booky than Phoenix Wright does, and I really appreciate that.
A lot of vibrant colors, especially a lot of neon pink-ish. The blood, that's the color of the blood, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
At least in the in the game. I don't know about the anime adaptations, but yeah, it's very, very popping colors, very striking character models and everything. Cool stuff design-wise, at least in those games.
Yeah, I think about the pink blood. I kind of feel like they did that just for shock value, and it works. Because that's something that they didn't use as much in the future arc story of the anime, but they used it in the despair arc, which I didn't get to that earlier, is a story that takes place before the games begin. So, but even though it is a prequel, you still need knowledge from the games walking into that.
Weird.
Yeah, because otherwise a lot of things just don't quite make the sense that they should. And I realize a lot of what I'm saying sounds goofy. It sounds like a weird setup. It is. But all of this is the brainchild of one Kazutaka Kodaka, and he has his own, I guess not quite cinematic universe, but his own grandmaster plan for all of the characters and the plot, and everything ties all together pretty well. So
it's a bit like, I don't know, it's a bit like Type Moon stuff, or
yeah, I guess
just a lot more well written.
Well, that's Nasu for you.
Yeah,
bless his heart,
if not his writing. But yeah, that's what it feels like. Just from you telling me about it. I mean, I've only watched someone else play through the first game and parts of the second game. I haven't played them myself. I probably will get to that since they've been announced for PS4, and I'll finally have a console that I can play them on. But I know virtually nothing about the franchise beyond that, but from what you told me, it sounds like, okay, this this is turning into something really big, and I does it get? I don't know if I'm jumping ahead now, but does it get any kind of conclusion with the advent of those 2 anime series that you want to talk about today?
Oh yeah, definitely. It does reach a conclusion. What they kind of did was they had like a big concluding episode after both of the series called that. I don't know why they, gave a single episode the name of an arc, but they called it the Hope arc. Mm-hmm. Just something that ties everything together, gives it an ending that is not full of completely full of despair and terribleness.
Okay. That's a change.
Yeah, I know, right? And it's tough to really talk in great detail about the shows just because they tie so heavily into the games, and if you haven't played them, go do it. Go do it now. They're on PlayStation Vita. They're on Steam. They're gonna be on PS4 in January, like CC just said. Just do yourself a favor and play them. They're good fun actually, and they really put your deductive reasoning to the test. I'd say even more so than Phoenix Wright.
I'm probably gonna suck at them even more.
Now, if you so desire, I mean, there does exist an adaptation of the first game in anime form, and it's loyal to the source material, but there's some details that get left out, and it doesn't feel as well detailed as the game is. Like, if you want the full story on a lot of things, you're going to have to play the game.
Just like with Phoenix Wright, but even more jarring in that. Well, not even more, but just as jarring for different reasons. The games feel more visually appealing than the anime adaptation, in my opinion. It felt, while faithful, the anime adaptation of Danganronpa felt very by the books too.
Well, yeah, but as far as the actual visuals and the animation go, I feel like the adaptation of the first Danganronpa game at least has maybe half a step up on Phoenix Wright.
Oh, yes. There's definitely somewhat of a budget there and some kind of direction. It's just how the adaptation itself is handled. Like, it doesn't do anything with the story that is like, that makes good use of the elements that only anime can bring to the table. In my opinion, it's just, okay, these are the cases from the game. This is gonna put exactly what that is in the show as well. And if you want a basic, rundown of the story, that's fine, that's good. But aside from that, there is nothing that makes this, worth. Besides of saving time, maybe nothing in this makes it worth watching instead of playing the game. And This is always that's always a shame, in my opinion. If you have like a different medium and put that there, give it something that makes use of that medium and brings something to the table that improves on certain aspects of the game, or that the game couldn't deliver on just because it's a different medium, or however because of the form of presentation they chose for that game. But yeah. Nothing wrong with the adaptation itself. It's just, if you have the choice, I think playing the games would still be the better option, right?
Right. Definitely.
Especially since there's no adaptation of the second one. So
yeah,
and also the Spare Girls.
That not so much that there isn't an adaptation of Ultra Despair Girls, but the fact that there wasn't one of 2, I still don't quite understand, because they just jumped straight from 1 to quote unquote 3. So without going into spoilers too much, how does the story continue? Like, is it straightforward? I mean, it can't be, since one is a prequel and one is a sequel. But were you feeling immediately back at home, so to speak? Did you immediately know what was going on? Could you were there a lot of familiar characters in there from the games? Did you know exactly what was going on from the beginning? Did the story immediately make sense? Yeah, I mean, well, I had recently finished the second game And then I put a wrap on Ultra Despair Girls by about the third or fourth week of the show's airing, which I at first thought that it was just, a side game that didn't have really, important main story. But I was like, hey, I'll check it out anyway. I was wrong.
It's all related.
Because of this, the main characters in Ultra Despair Girls do definitely show up in there. They don't have as prevalent of a role, but they do have their bit to play. But more to the point, coming into this almost immediately after finishing the games, it was very familiar. It was very easy for me to just get right in there and refamiliarize myself, as it were, because it starts with future arc begins with Makoto. He's brought forth before this organization called the Future Foundation. A little on the nose considering the name of the arc, I know. Mm-hmm. But he's brought forth before them and he's on suspicion of aiding those who would cause despair for our world. And he's basically it's not really a court, but like a tribunal sort of thing. Like you are under suspicion of doing all sorts of bad shit, dude. What do you have to say for yourself? And from there, shit goes very south. Mm-hmm. And
as expected.
And another killing game begins, but it's in a different form than it is in the games. So
intriguing. So that exactly what I said I would want from, well, it's not a straightforward adaptation of any of the games because it's a new story, but apparently it's bringing something new to the table that hasn't been in the games yet. So that's cool.
Right. And Despair Arc is basically all about the 77th class of Hope's Peak Academy, which is the main cast of the second game, mm-hmm. and basically all about, how their class came together, basically the fall of Hope's Peak, and everything that came from that.
Is it leading? Is it leading directly? Is its ending directly leading into the second game, or in the first game, or is it? I don't know. Is there some connection with the other series, with the future arc or something?
Yeah, there's definitely a connection to the second game. It doesn't. Parts of it lead directly into the second game, and other parts are filled in different ways. It's tough to really say with coming out and saying it.
Yeah. And please, I know I'm not super concerned with spoilers usually, at least when it comes to some parts, but with this one, since I still want to play the games and I saw only half of the second one and I still want to watch the anime, I'm really glad you decided you refrain from using too much spoiler material. That makes the review more difficult, but
it makes it tougher to sell to everyone, even though as I'm just saying at face value, holy shit, this show is great, watch it. Wait, don't watch it, play these 3 games first, then watch it. Just immerse yourself in the Dingler rumpus.
I mean, that's a tall order. Like, play these 3 games before watching like these 2 anime series. I mean,
because that's a total of about close to 90 hours, depending on how fast you read and how in depth you get.
We've already said that the story of the games is like interesting enough in itself that warrant, playing them. But is playing the games worth it for watching the anime in the sense that everything comes together at the end of the anime series that you're like, yeah, with everything I've played and with everything I've watched, this feels like a complete story at this point, at least up to a certain point, because apparently there's still more coming. There's a third game announced, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think that's supposed to be its own news story, though. We don't have many details yet.
Okay, but does like do the first 3 games and those 2 anime series, including that bonus episode, the Hope arc, do they feel like a complete story that makes it worth like experiencing every part of it? Or would you say like, those parts are stronger and those parts are a bit weaker, and maybe you want to skip out on that one if you have to skip out on something? Or would you say it's all very evenly good and you should really take it all in? Otherwise, you're completely missing out on very important aspects of that franchise.
This is the fanboy in me coming out. I absolutely do. I honestly really do feel like everything ties together the way it needs to, because I remember back before the shows, these latest shows started airing, Kodaka saying he said, I have more story to tell in regard to all of these characters, but the way I want to tell it is in the form of an anime. So he had this planned out, and this is what he wanted to do. So I feel like, yeah, absolutely, it's with the original creator's vision. So I feel like it is a disservice, doing the series as a whole a disservice, to not experience all of these pieces of it.
Okay, so this feels like a big cross-media experiment that worked out really well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Is there... You said that the new game is going to be apparently its own story again. Is there any room for telling more stories about those characters? Like, might there be another anime in the works or something like that? Or does it feel like they're like a proper conclusion that doesn't leave much room for exploring more of that specific part of the Danganronpa world?
I feel like anything. Honestly, I feel like anything could be possible. The way the presentation is, the way it's written, we won't know until the new game comes out because we just don't know about it. So,
all right.
We'll find out.
Well, yeah, and until that happens, and until the new anime, possible new anime comes out, for you people who haven't, experienced anything of Danganronpa yet, there is a lot of ground to cover. You got lots of stuff to do.
Get started now.
But according to John, it's worth it, and at least from my experience, from me experiencing like parts of the first 2 games, I think it's worth it too, and I want to do it. I'm gonna try to play the games myself, and when they come out for PS4, and I intend to watch the anime, of course, the anime series. Anything more you want to highlight about the show or the franchise in general, or the adaptation?
We'll talk a little about the crew because they haven't done that yet.
Mm-hmm.
The shows were animated by Studio. Don't know if I'm going to say this right, but because I think it's a German word, the Studio Lerche.
Lerche, yeah, it's a
Lerche.
It's a tree.
Okay, so yeah, so they have basically become. They are the Danganronpa studio because after the games came out, they animated the adaptation of the first game. They did all of the anime cutscenes in Ultra Despair Girls. They, did both the Future arc and Despair arc. So that is basically what they do now, as far as I can see.
Oh, it's not a tree; it's a bird. I'm an idiot. Whoops.
Oops.
Sorry, I just had to. No, there. Yeah, there are 2 lashes in German. I'm sorry. One is a tree, and one is a bird. So the one with E is the bird. I mixed those up. Well, I know my native language. But yeah, it's a bird. It's a lark. It's in English. So it's basically studio lark. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. It's like looking this up just to be sure, and whoops. Tell you what I know. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
No big deal. So apparently the show has a director and a chief director. The chief director is Seiji Kishi, who apparently worked on Assassination Classroom, did some supervisory work on the Persona 3 movie series, and he's done a few other things. Like
his experience with game adaptions then.
Yeah, apparently, even though it was an OVA, he directed Fate Prototype. Mm-hmm. And he also did the direction on Yuki Yuna is a Hero, which is another show that is very close to my heart. Mm-hmm. The director, not the chief director, I'm still not quite sure what the difference is, is someone named Daisei Fukuoka, who hasn't done much else as far as heading things up in direction, but he's worked on stuff like Aikatsu, Code Geass, Gundam Age, so, he has worked on, big name stuff as well. Mm-hmm. And the other, we already mentioned Kazutaka Kodaka, who is the series creator, scenario supervisor, all of that good stuff. But one person I really, really want to highlight is the show's musician, Masafumi Takada, because he is a master of his craft. The music in this show and in the games, amazing. It's so good.
It's very striking, yes.
Yeah, it's got... I don't even know how to describe it as a single genre, because he's very adaptive with his work for, the situation that the music calls for. I mean, he's done all sorts of other stuff, too, like the Earth Defense Force series, Killer 7. He did some stuff for Samurai Champloo. He's had his fingers in a little bit of everything, but yeah, the soundtrack in Danganronpa as a whole is incredible. And even if you have no interest in playing the games or watching the show, listen to the music because it's great.
Will do.
Yeah, I feel like that's my piece on Danganronpa 3. The End of Hope's Peak Academy, Future Arc and Despair Arc. It's great. It ties into its original material excellently, and it's just a lot of fun. It's really cool. Go watch it. Go play it. Go love it.
In that order.
Yes.
So, the story of D.Gray-man, and thus the story of D.Gray-man Hallow, which I'm gonna talk about today, is set in an alternate version of 19th century Europe. The main character is Alan Walker. He's an exorcist and a member of the Black Order, a secret organization that is trying to rid the world of the living weapons called Akuma. Yeah, I know Akuma means demon, but yeah, in this case is really the name for the weapons more than them being actual demons, because they're more like robots.
So you mean to say that 19th century Europe is getting overrun by an army of Cyber Akuma from Marvel vs. Street Fighter? Got it.
Exactly what I'm saying. Call 19th century Ryu to save us from despair. Anyway... Responsible for the existence of those weapons is not Capcom, but the so-called Millennium Earl, who is a jolly old grinning fat man, but definitely not Santa. He comes to people in their most deep and desperate moments after losing a beloved person, and offers them to bring said person back from the dead. Of course, stuff like that always has a catch, and what he doesn't tell the grieving people is that he binds the souls of their loved ones to the mechanical weapons called Akuma, who then kill the person that brought them to life.
Jeez.
And takes over their body. So yeah, you can already tell this is a very grim show in certain parts. It gets very dark, very sad. There's a lot of emotions in that show in certain aspects, which I appreciated. Sometimes shonen shows can lack in that department. D.Gray-man doesn't. And yeah, Akuma can only be destroyed by anti-Akuma weapons created from the mystical ancient energy called innocence that is part of every destined exorcist's body and can manifest in different ways. Alan, for example, has a parasitic anti-Akuma weapon in his arm that can take the shape of a giant claw or a gun, for example. And during the course of the series, he travels the world to find more exorcists, to bring them into the Black Order, so that the world can be finally cleansed of the threat of the Millennium Earl and his family of super powerful beings, the Noah clan. Yeah, that's the basic story outline for D.Gray-man. And it's based on a manga by Katsura Hoshino, which started in 2004 and is still running, but apparently gets updated rather sparsely. So it's kind of the Hunter x Hunter / Berserk syndrome. I don't know what her game of choice is, if it's Idolmaster or Dragon Quest. She has a different reason for I don't know, not updating that story too often. She was also the character designer for Valvrave for the anime. Well, the character designs in that show were actually pretty good, in my opinion. So
yeah, but still having your name tied to that is
yeah, it's kind of shit. But still, she's probably the least bad aspect of that show. So there you go. Her character designs are anyway. And she wrote a light novel series for D.Gray-man. I forgot the name of that, but yeah, that ran for 3 volumes. So she's done some stuff besides only the manga. But yeah, there was already a D.Gray-man anime that ran from 2006 to 2008. And it got a whopping 103 episodes. Just like the new one, just like D.Gray-man Hallow, it was animated by TMS. We already talked about them in our previous episode in John's review of Sweetness and Lightning. A big studio with a long history, did a lot of cool stuff in anime and in Western animation. So yeah, they're responsible for the old series and this one. Unlike, for example, the most recent Hunter x Hunter series by Madhouse that had an earlier anime adaptation as well, D.Gray-man Hallow is not a reboot or a remake. It's a alleged sequel to the old D.Gray-man series from 2006.
Wow.
So it's been 8 years since that show wrapped up. So before watching Hallow, I went back and watched pretty much all of the old show, minus the filler episodes, to get back up to speed, because I had forgotten pretty much about most of the story. And I'm glad I did, for 2 reasons. The original D.Gray-man is actually a pretty damn good shonen show. A lot of big stuff came after it, so I wasn't so sure how it holds up today, but it does hold up surprisingly well. It has an interesting, pretty dark story, but with enough heart and humor sprinkled in between, so it doesn't make you feel depressed all the time. The animation quality is mixed, as it happens with TMS sometimes. But mostly decent, and some of the battles are really cool in my opinion. It also wraps up on kind of a cliffhanger, which I remembered, which was one of the reasons I wanted to go back. So I was really glad after all this time that we got more of it, and that, it was supposed to sequel and not a reboot, even though I would have taken a reboot too, actually, obviously. Getting rid of some of the fillers and everything, that would have been okay too. But the second reason why it was a good decision to go back and watch the old show is that I would have been totally lost if I hadn't done that.
Considering it's been 8 years?
Yeah. And, sometimes, when you get a sequel to a series that's, a bit older and everything, you get, I don't know, a summary of the story so far or shit like that. Yeah, Hallow doesn't do that. It's a true sequel, and it expects you to have watched the old series or read the manga up to that point, because there's basically no explanation whatsoever for newcomers to what is going on here. There's a basic story setup summary of around 10 seconds or something in the first episode, telling you who the two warring factions are in this show, and that's it. That's all you get. If you haven't watched the previous show, you won't have any idea what is going on, who these characters are, what the good guys want, what the bad guys want, how everyone came together. So yeah, if you want to get into D.Gray-man, Hallow is not the place to start. You have to watch the old show or read the manga. I'm sorry. But yeah, since I had rewatched the old show, the transition for me to the new show was pretty flawless. Hallow basically picks up exactly where the old adaptation ended. Of course, we get updated character models, some new voice actors and everything. But other than that, I pretty much immediately felt at home. Like I said, it connects to the old show pretty damn well. That's what I ask you about that in your Danganronpa review. How well does the anime connect to the games? Do you immediately feel at home in the world the anime sets up if you've played the games? And I got that of watching Hallow after watching the old series. It's not like, okay, I have no idea how we got to that point. It's like, okay, the old series ends on a rather ominous shot, and Hallow picks up immediately at that point, pretty much. So all the old characters are there, everyone is here, and you're really happy to see them, see all your favorites again. And yeah, it's cool. It's like, hey, we're back. D.Gray-man is back. Amazing. Yeah, I was really glad when the first episode aired and I watched it. The problems start after that. After that first episode. And the main problem is Hallow has very uneven pacing. The first few episodes are a bit meandering, maybe. They're spent on adding a new exorcist to the roster and detailing his backstory. And then shit gets fucking crazy. Like a bunch of new members of the Noah clan, who are part of the antagonists and basically the family of the Millennium Earl, so to speak, without giving too much away. A bunch of new members of that clan are introduced, which we basically learn nothing about during the course of the series. The old show profited from a very small circle of antagonists. Hallow does full overkill in the character department. Not only the bad guys, who for some reason look a lot like the Arrancar from Bleach now. I don't know why. They're wearing these white coats and have dark skin, and it looks very much like the Arrancar from Bleach. I don't know if that was like some reverse influence or something, or if that came first in the manga and then Kubo did it. I don't know who came first in that regard, but they look really similar. Really similar. There has to be a connection there. But anyway, yeah. Aside from those guys, also the supposedly good guys get a lot new members. There's there are new kinds of exorcists introduced, called the Third Exorcist, who have like this weird special dimension distortion powers and everything. And there are a bunch of them, and they're thrown at you, with a bunch of other new characters. And it's like, wait, who are these people? Well, no time to explain the backstory of those guys. We have to introduce those guys. And yeah, even if you've watched the old show, there's so much shit flying at you in Hallow that you can feel lost at times. I don't even want to imagine how it is if you get into this series without any knowledge whatsoever about the show. Wow. Holy shit. It must seem like chaos. It's too much. And just when we start to learn more about some of those characters who have been introduced to us at a breakneck pace, the show ends because it got only 13 episodes. Like that's like, I don't know. That's not enough. Like the first show, even minus fillers, maybe mounted up to like 80 to 90 episodes or something.
Yeah, it seems really strange that they would just like swing back around so violently on the number of episodes unless there's more of it coming.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I don't know how much manga material Hallow covered. And if there's anything left, considering how sparsely apparently the manga is updated. But yeah, I want to see, I want to see how that story continues, because just because it has pacing issues and, you know, way too many characters, it's not to say that the show isn't interesting. We learn a lot more about the Black Order and why they are actually not really the clear-cut good guys in this story. I mean, you had your suspicions in the first series because, you know, some of the higher-ups apply methods in regards to battling the Akuma and the Millennium Earl that are not, you know, not really decent and morally acceptable. And the show goes even farther in that territory in Hallow. The Black Order has some skeletons in their closets, and some pretty big ones too. And that stuff is interesting. We finally, which is also very much connected to that, we finally learned the background story of one of the main characters, Yu Kanda, that was teased a lot in the old show, and now we finally learn about where he came from, what he's all about, and everything. He was pretty much shrouded in mystery during the first series, so I very much appreciate that we finally learn pretty much all about him. And for fans of the old anime, it's just cool to see all those characters again, and some of them, you know, finally get in their comeuppance in terms of story development. And well, albeit with more prettied up character designs, like the old character design was a bit more typical shonen-y, and now it's very much like, hey Fujoshi crowd, look at this show too. We got pretty boys. Uh-oh. You want to date those pretty boys? You want to fantasy date those pretty boys? You want to see some man meat? Well, we're not getting man meat, but still, yeah, it's there. A lot of the characters are prettied up, a lot. Yeah, so there you go. But aside from that, yeah, this is cool stuff, and especially for people who like the old show a lot, which turns out I'm one of those people. And there are a lot of interesting story setups and payoffs, especially regarding Alan and the Millennium Earl. Yeah, so there's a lot of cool stuff, and it's a good continuation of the story in itself. But the series needed more in some regards and less in others. Like, less character introductions with more time and episodes spent on them. Yeah, that's basically the gist of it. Some of the story developments needed time to breathe and sit with you instead of the series rushing to the next plot point. I'd say that's the main problem. Like, at least in the latter part of the series, the breakneck pacing and character introductions and everything. And also, most of the show feels like a setup to a bigger conflict, like to the final conflict of the series, instead of a wrap up of the old storyline, like more like an in-betweener or something. So, of course, most of that can be contributed to, you know, the manga still running and having not finished. But the ending of Hallow is even more of a cliffhanger than the ending of the first show. So if now this is the final anime thing we get from D.Gray-man, that would be really depressing. But since the series came back after 8 fucking years, my hopes for getting another season are now much higher than they were after finishing up the old show. So yeah, I'm pretty sure at some point we'll get another season. And yeah,
hopefully it'll be sooner than 8 more years.
Yeah, definitely. Also, if we do get another season, I really hope we'll have more than 13 episodes, because that definitely wasn't enough for all the stuff squeezed into this show. Mostly for the sake of pacing, of course. Because after watching the old show, which had a much slower pacing, this felt like D.Gray-man on fast forward or speed or ecstasy or something in a lot of parts. And yeah, there was no time to breathe. I would still recommend the show because I think it's good shonen fare. If you like that stuff, like me, if you're a fan of that, I really recommend it, because it also has some stuff that other shonen shows don't do. Some pretty interesting characterization and a rather dark storyline, which is also not that super common in these shows, in my opinion. It's got cool characters, like I said, good story, with a neat dark atmosphere and some crazy designs. Also great music by Kaoru Wada, who did the music for Inuyasha and also Cash and Sins, for example, which had, in my opinion, very striking soundtracks. And yeah, so does D.Gray-man. It has a great main theme, in my opinion, and some very, very nice, dark, moody tracks that set up the atmosphere very well. And yeah, I really like the soundtrack of that series, just in general. I can understand if like 103 episodes of an anime as a preset to watch this one are just as much a turn off as having to play 3 games before watching the anime series of for Danganronpa. But definitely don't start with Hallow, because you will be completely lost. You can't do it. It makes no sense.
Well, I mean, it's at least less of a time investment.
Yeah, maybe. I would say if you want to get into it, like I said, which I still recommend, grab yourself an episode list online, and there are some that have the fillers in the first show marked, and just skip over those episodes. You will be able to reduce the episode count to a somewhat manageable length, in my opinion. It's still a lot, but what's left is worth it and got decent pacing and everything, so I don't think you would get bored. Like I said, if you're into shonen stuff, it's worth watching. Better than, some of the other shows out there, even some of the big ones. I had fun with it, and I hope there's more on the way. And that is a wrap on the 19th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to vrt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and animebrainfreeze.com. Leave us comments and questions anywhere you like, or send us an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next show. Macht's gut.
Take care, everybody. Next time on Anime Brain Freeze,
we go to war in search of the most delicious meal in the world!
But the main dish turns out to be revenge, served with a lot of bootlegged liquor.